What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we are here, as we are every Monday afternoon, to recap all of the games that happened on Week 8, or I guess the previous week. This week, it just happens to be Week 8. We have a lot of games to get through today, 14 total, as really no teams were on bye, so it is time to get through this. We have a lot of games to talk about, a lot of stuff to talk about, not a lot of time, so let's just hop right into it. We're going to try and do this in about an hour. I'm going to share my screen. First game on tap for us here today is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, this was not particularly close. The Eagles, they win this one 37-17. The Bengals, they are now 0-4 at home. They have not won a home game the entire year, and the Eagles, they really had themselves a day. Let's just be honest. We'll start with the winning team here, Philadelphia. Looking at the receiving or the passing for Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts, he goes 16 for 20, 236 and 1, but he did most of his damage on the ground. As you can see, Saquon Barkley, he goes 22 for 108. No touchdowns. That's because Jalen Hurts had 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. Finishes as the QB1 here this week for fantasy football, 10 for 37 as well. If you have Jalen Hurts, you absolutely love to see it. If you had Saquon Barkley, not something you like to see, but hey, this is going to be the thing with the Eagles at times this year. They're going to have games where Saquon Barkley gets the touchdowns. There's going to be games where Jalen Hurts gets the rushing touchdowns, the tush push, despite the narrative that you heard all offseason about potentially going away because maybe a guy like Jason Kelce isn't in the lineup. No, they're still going to do it, and they're still good at it. Tush push still happens here in Philadelphia, man. Jalen Hurts, 10 rushing attempts for 37 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, receiving-wise, we did have a decent outing from a couple of these guys. You did have Devonta Smith have the best day. He goes 6 for 85 and a touchdown. The touchdown obviously is the reason why the day was the best for him. A.J. Brown goes 5 for 84. And then still, no Dallas Goedert for this team. Grant Calcaterra keeps filling in. 3 for 58 for him. Deep dynasty play, maybe if you have him, you need him. I think Calcaterra has shown that you can play him in a deep dynasty format, or at least is worth a pickup because he could be the guy behind Dallas Goedert here moving forward. So really nothing crazy from the Eagles other than obviously Jalen Hurts taking all of those touchdowns from Saquon Barkley on the ground. Now let's look at Cincinnati passing. Joe Burrow, he goes 26 for 37, 234 yards, a touchdown, an interception in this one. Chase Brown goes 12 for 32 on the ground, got a touchdown that somewhat saved his day. Now, we talked about this matchup not being a great matchup for Chase Brown. We actually made him a guy that we did not want to play. We felt like he was risky, probably a better player to put onto your bench. Now, the touchdown, maybe it makes it to where you're like, he gave me enough that I'm okay with what he gave me, but the reality is it still wasn't a great matchup, and if he doesn't have that touchdown, you know, the 2.7 yards per carry, that's not great from Chase Brown. Zach Moss, still pretty uninvolved. I just don't think that Moss is that relevant in this backfield anymore. And then National Tight End Day, Mike Gesicki goes 7 for 73, leads the way. No T. Higgins in this game. Jamar Chase goes 9 for 54 and a touchdown, has himself a day. And then Jermaine Burton gets 1 catch for 41 yards. Eric all of these other guys involved as well. But one thing to note is really that when T. Higgins is not in this lineup, it almost feels like Mike Gesicki finds himself into that slot wide receiver role, and he gets more involved when T. Higgins is out. So it almost, to me, the one takeaway for the Cincinnati Bengals offense is that if Higgins is not in the lineup, we can start Mike Gesicki. When Higgins is in the lineup, you cannot start Mike Gesicki. So if T. Higgins misses another week with this quad injury, I think you can fire up Mike Gesicki next week for the Cincinnati Bengals. But overall, maybe keep an eye on Jermaine Burton. I think it's more so just, obviously, they had to bring a guy in. Yoshavash is more likely the guy that fills in as the number 2 in T. Higgins' absence, but we'll keep an eye on Jermaine Burton. He was a guy that a lot of people liked in the dynasty realm and could have some value long term. Obviously, the same thing can be said for Eric All. Let's move on to this next game here. The next game on the docket that we will talk about is going to be this Ravens and this Browns game. And my gosh, man, as soon as we thought that the Baltimore Ravens were looking as good of a team as ever, they do the most Baltimore Ravens thing that they could possibly do, and they drop a game to a team that they shouldn't have lost to. Cleveland wins this one 29-24. Baltimore is now 5-3. Cleveland is 2-6. And oh yeah, by the way, it was the Jameis Winston coming out party. He goes 27 for 41, 334 yards, and 3 touchdowns. No interceptions for Jameis Winston. What a day for Jameis. Chubb is still getting all of the work on the ground, 16 for 52. He's just not going to be very efficient. Now, this is also a very tough rushing matchup. Obviously, Baltimore, one of the better rushing defenses in the NFL, so take that line with a grain of salt. But we had worries about Nick Chubb coming into the year. With the knee injury that he had, he's going to have a little bit of inefficiency to his game, probably for the majority of 2024. He's also a little bit of an older running back, so we're going to keep an eye on that one as well long term, especially in Dynasty. I think in Dynasty, if he goes out and he has a big game at all this year where he scores 1 or 2 touchdowns and has a little bit of a sign of life, I think this is a guy that we should be looking to sell. Now, the big story, I think, for Cleveland that we probably need to talk a little bit more about is all of a sudden, all of these wide receivers got unlocked. We had seen for weeks and weeks and weeks under Deshaun Watson that nobody was really viable as a wide receiver option in this offense. And now Jameis Winston under center. Cedric Tillman goes 7 for 99 and 2 touchdowns on 9 targets. Elijah Moore goes 8 for 85 on 12 targets. Jerry Jeudy 5 for 79 on 8 targets. And then David Njoku goes 5 for 61 on 7 targets with a touchdown in that one as well. So I think right now, as long as Jameis Winston is under center, obviously this matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, they've been a little bit lighter against some of the receiving options. They're a good matchup to target when you have your fantasy football wide receivers. But the proof is in the pudding right here, man. They're going to throw the football more with Jameis Winston. They're going to be better at throwing the football with Jameis Winston. Cedric Tillman is probably, assuming he is still under 50% rostership, going to be one of the top pickups of the week, if not the number one top pickup of the week on the waiver wire. Elijah Moore should probably find his way into a waiver wire episode later tomorrow as well for us. And then everybody else, I think they are just fine plays as long as Jameis Winston is under center. Now, obviously, for the Baltimore Ravens, they lose this one, which is not ideal for their playoff hopes, but we still had some good fantasy football numbers in this one. Lamar Jackson, he goes 23 completions for 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Henry also doing what Derrick Henry does best, 11 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown, just continues to find that end zone despite this defensive line for Cleveland being one of the better defensive lines in football. Lamar Jackson also on the ground, 8 for 46. This is what they're going to do. It's the Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry show. Zay Flowers, he had a great matchup, goes 7 for 115, no touchdown. Really the only touchdowns of the day went to Nelson Aguilar and Mark Andrews, who Mark Andrews has now had 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games for the Ravens. So it kind of just shows you that as much as fantasy football is fast-paced and week by week, sometimes that gets lost as well. You know, we get the first initial impressions where Mark Andrews has a slow start to the season, and now Mark Andrews is probably one of the better tight ends that we could have played over the last month of football. And a lot of people were at the point where they were like, let's just drop Mark Andrews off of our football team. It just shows you that fantasy football can be a little bit reactive, and patience sometimes can be rewarded in this sport that we play. Other than that, though, you know, nobody else really had a great day. Zay really was the one who was leading the way for the receivers, and he came in with a questionable tag. A lot of people were worried about the ankle. Turned out just fine. Overall, great day from the Browns, who won this one very last minute, man. It was hey, what can you say with Jameis Winston, man? Jameis Winston is one of those guys that it's just hard not to root for him. Let's move on to the next one here. We're going to go to the next game. The next game is the Titans and the Lions. Now, the Lions here, they have been showing off over the last couple of weeks. It seems like they keep just putting up 50-point games or 40-point games or whatever. They blow out the Titans in this one, 14-52. The Lions are now 6-1. The Titans are now 1-6. Mason Rudolph was under center for the Titans in this one, no Will Levis. And that is pretty much the main thing. Obviously, first game without DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup for the Titans as well. Now, looking at Detroit, because we will talk about the winners first. Jared Goff, he goes 12 for 15, 85 yards, 3 touchdowns. Look, going 12 for 15 and 85 yards in a game where you put up 52 points is insane behavior from Ben Johnson and the Detroit Lions. If you started Jared Goff, you probably were not very happy with it, other than the 3 touchdowns that you kind of got there. Excuse me. I'm still recovering from this sickness, so bear with me here. But another passing touchdown in this game goes to David Montgomery. He looked like a damn quarterback, bro. The ball came out of his hand with some fire. It had a nice spiral on it. He throws a touchdown to Sam Laporta in this one. Now, rushing on the ground, you had Detroit go out there. 11 carries for Jahmyr Gibbs. He goes 127 and a touchdown. He broke off a long 70-yard one down the left side of the field there. Took it home. Nobody could catch him. David Montgomery goes 9 for 33 and a touchdown. It just feels very much like if you have any Detroit Lions option at this point in time, you throw them in the lineup because they're scoring 40, 50 points a week, and anybody can get into the end zone. So even though David Montgomery, 33 yards is not great for him, he finds the end zone and did his best, I guess, Chase Brown impression in this one, but maybe a little bit better as well because he threw for the passing touchdown too. So it's just play anybody on Detroit at the moment. Receiving-wise, a quiet day from Amon-Ra St. Brown, who goes 2 for 7 and a touchdown. It is his lowest targets in a game since his rookie year for Amon-Ra. So not like I'm putting much weight into it. This one got out of hand pretty quickly. I think at halftime it was like, yeah, it was a blowout. It was like a 35 points at halftime for the Lions. So yeah, I mean, we're not putting too much weight into it. Laporta goes 6 for 48. Khalif Raymond and everybody else, whatever. It's just crazy, man, because you look at how many points they scored, and then you look at the receiving, and it's like the highest receiver had 48 yards. Jared Goff threw for like 80-something, 85. Like, they put up a bunch of points, but nobody really had a bunch of yardage. So it's just crazy to see, but the Lions, they look damn good. As far as Tennessee goes, man, Mason Rudolph, he goes 22 for 38, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. He had drives where he looked all right. He had drives where he looked like he was one of the worst quarterbacks in football. It is what it is. Tony Pollard still got all of the bulk of the work. 20 carries for 94 yards. Did not find the end zone in this one. It was kind of frustrating at times because there was opportunities where they were on the goal line or within the 10-yard line, and they were just not handing Tony Pollard the ball. He's going to have better days. Obviously, this Detroit Lions defense is one of the better defenses, but it's just tough, man. Tony Pollard, he's going to have better days. One of the better end-of-season schedules, playoff schedules for fantasy running backs, so definitely somebody that I'm still comfortable having on my roster and somebody I'm definitely targeting moving forward. Calvin Ridley, though, DeAndre Hopkins not in the lineup. He gets 10 receptions for 143 yards and 15 targets. He went over 100 yards in the first quarter. So this is what Calvin Ridley wants as the wide receiver for the Titans. This is what we want if you have Calvin Ridley on your team. Everybody else, though, nothing really of major importance. Westbrook-Ikine is the guy who found the end zone, but it's a mess for Tennessee right now. They probably should be sellers going into the NFL trade deadline here later this next week. And yeah, man, it's just not great for the Titans right now. It's not a great rookie quarterback class, but they probably are going to need to take another swing at a franchise quarterback because Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, and this is not it. And Brian Callahan, the play calling has been mediocre, I think, at best so far, and he hasn't had the best personnel either, but it just hasn't looked great for Tennessee. Let's move on to the next game here. We are going to go to the Cardinals and the Dolphins, and this is the return of Tua Tagovailoa. Now, as I mentioned, Tua back in this game, but they still drop the game. I thought that Miami was going to have a good chance to win this one. They still did have a good chance to win this one, but Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, they did enough to win this one. Currently, number 1 in the NFC West. Could you imagine that Arizona's actually number 1 or tied for number 1 in the NFC West with how poorly they have played offensively over the last couple of weeks? I don't think many people even realize that, but yeah, it's kind of crazy for Arizona. Now, looking at Arizona passing-wise, Kyler Murray, he goes 26 for 36, 307 yards, 2 touchdowns. Played some good ball here, too. 5 for 19 on the ground, which isn't your normal Kyler Murray, but still enough. James Conner goes 20 for 53 and a touchdown. Very inefficient against this Dolphins rushing defense, but he still found the end zone, so it's fine. We did mention it's National Tight End Day, or was National Tight End Day yesterday. We're not going to keep beating that drum, but you'll notice a lot of the top scorers or receiving options for these teams here on Tight End Day were tight ends. And who could have wrote the script any better? It just reminds me, you guys need to remind me next year when it's National Tight End Day, which I found out for the first time is actually the 4th October, or the 4th Sunday of every October. Just throw some money on anytime touchdowns for the tight end position, and you'll probably come out very positive on the day. Trey McBride goes 9 for 124 on 11 targets. Marvin Harrison, a lot of people were worried about Marvin, us included, on this channel. He goes 6 for 111 and a touchdown on 7 targets. Hopefully we were able to sneak him into our lineups. I had him as a wide receiver 2 in my rankings this week, but he definitely outperformed that with this stat line. Michael Wilson also finds the end zone, 5 for 31 and a touchdown there as well. And Connor minorly involved in the receiving game. But right now, man, it seems like Arizona, they're playing very inconsistent football, but there's days where they go out and they play really good football like they did in this one, which, again, I don't know if I would call it really good football, but they played good enough to win the game. And like I said, they are tied for first in that NFC West. So who knows, man? Arizona, one of the most confusing teams to follow right now, just based off of the play calling that they have there from their offensive coordinator in Petzing, I think is the last name for Petzing. But overall, man, just not great to rely on from a consistency standpoint. Now let's look at Miami. Tua back in, goes 28 for 38, 234 yards and a touchdown. Not the most explosive day from Tua, but this is kind of back to normal, and you saw that a lot of these options for Miami got revived with Tua back in the lineup. Sorry about that, folks. Again, just recovering from this chest cold or whatever it was. But Devon Achane, he goes 10 for 97, had himself a pretty solid day. The thing that was annoying is obviously Raheem Mostert. He goes 9 for 19 and 2 touchdowns in that one. So he kind of took some of those touchdowns from Devon Achane, which could have had him as one of the better days of all running backs in fantasy this week, which he still was, but it probably kept him from number 1 overall. Tyreek Hill goes 6 for 72, doesn't find the end zone. Achane 6 for 50 in the air. This is the benefits of Tua for Achane, looking like one of the better running backs in fantasy football, an actual league winner, and a touchdown receiving. Jalen Waddle 4 for 45, and then everybody else kind of getting the ball sprinkled around. But Tua, he fumbled the ball 3 times, man, did not lose any of them, which is crazy that you would fumble the ball that many times. It's just Miami, they're going to get better with Tua back in the lineup. There's going to be some better days ahead for these receiving options. I think it's a sign of life. It's a sign of positivity if you have some of them. Devon Achane, obviously, we loved what we saw now after weeks of not really been excited to play him and really not liking the results of which he put out for our fantasy teams. We got a good day. Tyreek, that is the best day we've had in a while for him. Same with Jalen Waddle. It's just signs of life for Miami, and it'll get better with Tua back in the lineup. They just get some more reps under their belt. So definitely positive things moving forward, but overall, Arizona snuck this one out, and I did not think that they would win this one. I had Miami as my pick. All right, next game here is going to be the Jets and the Patriots. Look, man, the New York Jets right now, for my Dynasty Fantasy Football folks at home, they are that manager in your league that is like 9th in points for points against. They're dead last, so they have a decent chance that they think that they can win the championship. They have a lot of older vets on the team. They should be sellers, and they're bad, and they're a rebuild, but they don't recognize it. They're that dynasty manager in your league, and that's what the New York Jets are. This is a dumpster fire. Aaron Rodgers does not look like Aaron Rodgers anymore. Garrett Wilson is benefiting from having Davante Adams, but Davante Adams doesn't look that great in his first 2 games here. The defense has turned into a pumpkin after getting rid of Robert Saleh. The New York Jets are the New York Jets, and this is the Jets that they have always been. We were fooled at one time to think that the Jets could be good. They cannot. And I just say that as respectfully as possible, and even more annoyingly, they're not even utilizing their best options on offense anymore as they should be. Now, the New England Patriots, the lowest expectations that they've had in years. 2-6, the Jets 2-6, 25-22. New England wins this one, and Drake May gets knocked out of the game with a concussion in this one as well. So, look, man, let's talk about it. You have Brissett really playing the majority of the game. He did enough just to get this one finished for New England. 15 for 24, 132 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. You don't even know how they got it done, but they did. May, he only got those 6 attempts before being knocked out. But Ramondre Stevenson leads the way rushing, 20 carries for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. May running the football when he was in, getting a touchdown as well. He unlocks this offense so much more than Jacoby Brissett. It's just so evident when you see them on the football field. But like I said, they still did enough. Nobody really of relevancy probably that you were playing in your lineups, maybe other than Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry goes 5 for 45, but most people, probably nobody was playing. Kayshon Boutte, 3 for 46. Tyquan Thornton, 2 for 20. Austin Hooper, 3 for 15. Stevenson, some in the air. Demario Douglas, some people probably did play Demario Douglas. He goes 2 for 12, and he kind of worries me moving forward. I'm not going to put too much weight because Drake May wasn't in this game, but I think we've kind of seen now that they really just want to use Demario Douglas as a slot wide receiver for them. They're having Kayshon Boutte on the outside and some of these other guys in wide receiver or 2 wide receiver sets. Douglas is not being used that way. He's teetering on drop watch for me in my redraft leagues. Like, if there's better options on the waiver wire, I'm okay with us dropping Demario Douglas at this point. We had a flash, and right now it's looking like it was just a flash in the pan because we've had 2 weeks in a row where he really hasn't been that great. And yeah, I mean, I just think he's on drop watch right now for me. Now, looking at the Jets, like I said, we'll talk about them. There's not a lot of positive to talk about the New York Jets right now. But Aaron Rodgers, 17 for 28, 233, 2 touchdowns. He just looks a little bit slow right now as far as like the arm talent, the processing. It just feels like this offense is still stuck in slow motion. Now, the thing that was the most annoying is it seemed like once they switched their play calling from Nathaniel Hackett to Todd Downing, that they went back to bell cowing Breece Hall, and Breece Hall was getting 80% of the touches or whatever over the last couple of weeks, and he was one of the top running backs in fantasy football. And then this week, they give us Braylon Allen 12 carries, even getting some of the goal line stuff. He gets in rushing touchdown in this one. Very annoying to see. This is like a step backwards for us in fantasy football. Obviously, we thought we had gotten away from this BS that the Jets were doing with Braylon Allen, and I get it that he's a very talented player and he's good on the football field for them, but it's no surprise that Breece Hall is the most talented player for them on the field at most times. It just doesn't make sense why he's not being used more and why they have Braylon on the field so much at times. Garrett Wilson goes 5 for 113. This is actually probably some of the best football that I feel like I've seen Garrett Wilson play all year. And I said it's probably been because Devontae Adams has been added to this team and is now kind of opening up Garrett Wilson a little bit more in this offense. Adams goes 5 for 43 or 4 for 54. I don't know where I pulled those numbers on. Tyler Conklin goes 3 for 42 and he gets the touchdown. Conklin, I guess maybe you played him, but again, it's that national tight end day, I guess. You got to get the touchdown for the tight end, and these other guys don't benefit from that. So Breece not really used in the receiving game. This whole offense, like I said, just looked stale, stagnant, slow. Everybody looks like they're playing in mud. It's just not good for the New York Jets. And quite honestly, like, I don't think it's going to get better. I don't know why they were buying players like Adams, aging vets, or whatever. Maybe it's just to appease Aaron Rodgers. This is blow-up territory again, and it's unfortunate because it felt like for a while Joe Douglas there was putting together a really good young core where it was exciting. You had Sauce Gardner. You had guys like Jermaine Johnson and Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, and you were putting all of the pieces together, and obviously you missed on the quarterback of Zach Wilson. Maybe it wasn't even a miss on the quarterback. I'm not here to say that Zach Wilson is a good quarterback, but maybe it was just a miss on the head coach in Robert Saleh. He did have the defense looking great, but I think we've seen that you need to kind of have an offensive-minded head coach to help develop those rookie quarterbacks. At least that's the way that I believe it needs to kind of be done at the NFL level, but who do I know? I'm just the guy sitting at home. At the end of the day, man, it's unfortunate because it looks like this is being wasted, and we're going to get to a point where, I don't know, man, Garrett Wilson, teams were calling about, would the Jets trade them? Sauce Gardner's going to want top cornerback money here in a year or two. Breece Hall's going to want money. It's tough, man. I think they had a decent young window, and I think they've blown this window completely shut. It just isn't good for the New York Jets. So we'll move on to the next game, man. Sorry, Jets fans. I didn't want to be so negative, but that's just kind of my takeaways from what I've seen so far this year. We got the Falcons and the Buccaneers in this matchup. Buccaneers look better than I thought they would without Godwin and Evans in the lineup, and it wasn't enough still, though. Atlanta, they come away 31 points to Tampa Bay's 26. They win this one. They're now 3-0 on the road. Atlanta is 5-3 overall. Looking like a decent football team. We'll talk about them first. But Kirk Cousins finishes as one of the top quarterbacks for fantasy football on the week right now. 23 for 29, 276 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I don't want to keep saying tight end day, but you'll see why. He had those 4 touchdowns here in a minute. Bijan Robinson goes 13 for 63, no touchdown on the ground. Neither for Tyler Algier either, who goes 12 for 33. We talked about it with Breece and Braylon. Bijan and Algier is kind of the same thing. You hate to see these elite running back prospects, young guys like Bijan and Breece splitting the work. It's happening with Tyler Algier too, man. It's just very annoying for fantasy football purposes, but I get it. It's good for real life, but it's starting to make us really realize in fantasy, and specifically in dynasty fantasy football too, like, keep in mind, and I'm going to go into a short conversation about the 2025 rookie prospects without us going too deep into it, but like the number one rookie running back or the number one player in rookie drafts in dynasty fantasy football leagues right now, today, looks like Ashton Jeanty of Boise State, and he's a running back, right? If you're using the number one pick on a guy like Ashton Jeanty, seeing the way that the NFL has been operating with Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall, and we're getting other guys like Tyler Algier and Braylon Allen and some of these day 3 picks involved and taking away carries from number one guys who are being drafted in the first round, it makes me pause a little bit and think, how valuable is Ashton Jeanty? As exciting as it would be to make that pick, as much as I want to make that pick, as much as I think he's going to be a stud, and I think he truly is going to be a stud, the way the NFL treats the running back position, how worth it is it to use a number one overall rookie pick on a guy like Ashton Jeanty when we've seen stuff like this happen? Just makes me think, not anything conclusive. I'm not making any drastic decisions on that at the moment, but just a thought that I had when watching some of these guys and looking at this upcoming class. But it is frustrating for Atlanta. They're receiving kind of a stinker day from Drake London, who's been on a tear lately, but Darnell Mooney goes 5 for 92 and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts goes 4 for 91 and 2 touchdowns, one of which is pretty controversial. I don't know if he actually crossed the line. He dropped the football. It got knocked out by Antoine Winfield. I don't know. There's a lot circulating on the internet of whether or not it was a touchdown, but on the box score and in the game that concluded, it was called a touchdown. So we got the points for fantasy football. He goes 491 and 2. Bijan 6 for 37 and 1 in the air in this one. And then, like I said, Drake London, nothing really spectacular, 4 for 34 in the air. Now, for Tampa, Baker Mayfield's without his top 2 options. No Mike Evans, no Chris Godwin. He throws the football 50 times in this game. 37 out of 50 for 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. An up and down day for Baker Mayfield all around. But hey, what can you do when you're playing with the backups on your roster for the majority of the day? 9 for 44 from Bucky Irving on the ground, 6 for 29 from Rachaad White. This is a messy backfield, continues to be a messy backfield, and nothing super exciting in the backfield really either that you feel confident in playing most weeks. Now, Cade Otton leads the way, 981 and 2. He was a top waiver wire pickup last week when we saw what he was utilized like when those guys got knocked out of the game. Otton looks like as long as those guys are out, which is going to be another couple weeks, for Mike Evans at least. 3 more weeks for Mike Evans. Otton is probably a guy that you can comfortably play at the tight end position. Now, Raheem Jarrett, he goes 3 for 58. Bucky Irving, 7 for 40 in the air. Rachaad White, 5 for 38, and 1 receiving touchdown in this one. I kind of had a feeling that this is what was going to happen, is without some of the receiving options, they would lean into the receiving of the running back position, which Rachaad White is very, very good at. Bucky Irving had himself a decent day there as well, but Jalen McMillan is the guy that everybody was the most excited about. He goes 4 for 35. Trey Palmer goes 2 for 29. Ryan Miller, all of these other guys. Sterling Shepard, 3 for 18. Not great days from those guys. Maybe better days ahead. Jalen McMillan is still the guy that I prefer of all of them. You see he had 7 targets, which is a positive sign. Maybe better days coming ahead, but I'm not dropping Jalen McMillan yet. I'm still holding him another week. Let's see what happens. Just not the day that we wanted to see out of some of these guys here as they're filling in for those top options. So let's move on to the next game here. Like I said, lots of games to get through. I don't even know if we're halfway at this point. I don't even think we are. We're going to keep just trucking along, though. We got the Packers and the Jaguars game here, and this game was kind of disappointing. I'm not going to lie to you. I had hopes of more points, and I get, it's 30-27. I thought there was going to be even more points in this one than that. Jordan Love, I think, was just the most underwhelming of all of the assets, and he got knocked out of this game. Didn't finish. You see Malik Willis took some snaps as well. That's something we're going to be monitoring. They're calling it a groin injury. He didn't look healthy for the majority of the game, which was kind of concerning, and it did hinder some of the receiving options for Green Bay. But let's talk about the matchup as a whole. Green Bay, they're now 6-2 on the year. They win 30-27 despite Jordan Love getting knocked out early. Like I said, Love, he goes 14 for 22, 196, 0 touchdowns and an interception. Very disappointing overall. Willis, when he came in, he had a touchdown that was a passing touchdown, but he only threw the football 5 times. Josh Jacobs, he got 25 carries for 127 yards, 2 touchdowns. Great day from Josh Jacobs. This is what we've continued to say, why you should buy Josh Jacobs, why he should be a player that we target in the second half of the year. And he's starting to kind of come to form. Malik Willis ran the football 4 for 23, and then everybody else not really super involved, not worth talking about for the majority. But the receiving for Green Bay, you had Tucker Kraft go 3 for 78 and a touchdown. Romeo Doubs goes 3 for 72. Jaden Reed 2 for 55. Very disappointing day from Jaden Reed, in my opinion. I had him as a top 12 wide receiver in my rankings. Did not perform that way. Christian Watson goes 4 for 39. Dontavion Wicks 2 for 11. And it just got distributed across the board pretty evenly. Nobody got a massive target share. Romeo Doubs has continued to kind of be the guy who performs the most consistently out of all of these options, but it seems like every given week it's a different Green Bay wide receiver, whether it be Reed, whether it be Watson, whether it be Wicks. One of these guys is performing, and Romeo Doubs is the other guy that performs. So I think the guy that I'm the most comfortable with, not the guy who has the highest ceiling, but the guy I'm the most comfortable with knowing he has a high floor every week, is Romeo Doubs. And then Tucker Kraft, you can keep playing him, man. He is completely I just don't think that there's an argument. I know Musgrave is out right now with the injury. There's just not an argument for me that Musgrave is the better tight end at this point in your dynasty leagues moving forward. Like, Musgrave is definitely the backup. Tucker Kraft is the better guy moving forward. But we'll keep an eye on Jordan Love. We'll see how long he's out, if out at all. They said the injury is minor, but he could have his status in doubt here as we go into week 9. So we'll keep an eye on that overall. Looking at Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence goes 21 for 32, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Not enough to get the dub. He did get Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk both injured in this one. It wasn't Trevor Lawrence's fault, but I'm just saying he finished this game without those guys in the lineup. Tank Bigsby, he goes 18 for 78. Did not get into the end zone. No Travis Etienne in the lineup. You have to wonder whether or not Travis Etienne is potentially going to be a trade candidate as we get to this deadline as well, because Bigsby has kind of taken over the role. Etienne, he kind of feels like he's lost his job at this point. Now, BTJ, he goes 3 for 60 and a touchdown, the best receiver on the day, but he had a rib injury that is also getting an MRI here today. Once we get the MRI, we'll know a little bit more about the injury and whether or not he is going to miss time. Christian Kirk, though, we know he's going to miss time. What I have seen is a broken collarbone He went 2 for 59, broke the collarbone. He was a popular trade deadline candidate as well. There was rumors that he was potentially getting some buzz in the NFL trade market. Some teams were reaching out to see if he was going to be available. I can't imagine anybody's buying now that he has a broken collarbone and will be unavailable for the rest of the year. Brenton Strange, Parker Washington, Evan Engram, all of these guys had decent fill-ins, but I think when we're looking at this roster, with no Christian Kirk, with Brian Thomas potentially out, Evan Engram to me is the massive winner. He's going to get a massive bump. I think he becomes a top 3 to top 5 tight end play pretty much every week that those guys are not in the lineup. Parker Washington becomes interesting as well. We haven't really been able to rely on a lot of these these Jacksonville options, but if Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk are not in the lineup, Parker Washington maybe is worth a dart throw off your waiver wire. Definitely not somebody I'm burning priority on, but definitely worth a dart throw nonetheless. So we'll move on to this next game here. The game that I want to go to is the Colts and the Texans. There we are. The Colts, they lose this one 20-23. Houston is now 6-2. They do not feel like they have played like a 6-2 football team. They feel like they've been a little bit underwhelming at times. No Nico Collins in this lineup for the majority of the last 3 weeks. And in this one, Stephon Diggs gets hurt. Non-contact knee injury, which we have not been able to see a bunch of the news about it yet. I'm just double-checking right now as I'm looking at it. I don't have any injury updates for Stephon Diggs, but it was a non-contact knee injury, which is concerning. Obviously, there's fear for ACL. That is definitely a fear. So we are going to be keeping an eye on that one. Let's talk about the rest of the guys, though. CJ Stroud goes 25 for 37, 285, 1 touchdown. Joe Mixon goes 25 for 102 and 1 touchdown. Dare Ogunbowale and Dameon Pierce and all these other guys, they don't matter, man. Joe Mixon is getting 99.99999% of the work at this point. 25 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown. Like I said, you can't ask for much more than that for Joe Mixon. I think he's probably going to be a top 5 running back the rest of the way for us here in fantasy. Now, Stephon Diggs was leading the way, 5 for 81 before that knee injury. He did look like he was going to be on pace for a pretty solid day. Obviously knocked out early. Dalton Schultz, 4 for 52. Tank Dell, 4 for 35 and a touchdown. The touchdown kind of saved his day. And then Joe Mixon, 4 for 32 in the air as well. If Stephon Diggs is, I don't want to say he's going to be out for the year, but if he is out for the year, Tank Dell obviously gets a bump. Dalton Schultz gets a bump. But this team could not get Nico Collins back at a better time because he will be out this upcoming week here in Week 9, but Week 10 is the projected return date for Nico Collins. So they may be 1 week without Diggs where Tank Dell gets a massive boost in our rankings just by default of being the only guy there. But they need Nico Collins back in this lineup if Diggs is going to miss significant time. And in Dynasty, it kind of puts a damper on Diggs because he's a guy who looked pretty solid. And I felt like he was going to help contending teams down the stretch, and you probably were holding him if you were a contender. And now it's like one of those like late career ACL or whatever. Like I keep saying ACL, we don't know, but it's not looking great for his value in Dynasty. Let's talk about Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson goes 10 for 32, 175 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He looks so erratic. He looks so bad at times. Jonathan Taylor, 20 for 105 and a touchdown. He's probably the only consistent option here on Indianapolis that we can play on any given week. Still had himself a day coming back from that injury, so if you've been waiting on him, he came back and he showed out in true fashion. Receiving-wise, though, Josh Downs goes 4 for 109 and a touchdown. He had that 70-yard touchdown that was kind of a broken play from A-Rich. It was a little bit underthrown, but it still got in. Everybody else, just 1 reception for everybody, so this is the Anthony Richardson experience. Josh Downs, he's talented, but days like this are going to happen, and then you're going to have days where he puts up a Michael Pittman stat line as well, where it's 1 for 16 because Anthony Richardson can't get the ball around. So it's going to be tough to know when to play these guys. I just don't know what to do with the Colts options at the moment, man. It's something I don't feel great about right now. And if you have Anthony Richardson, even this outing, this is probably one of the better outings that he's had in recent memory. and you're probably not happy with what you got either. So overall, that's kind of the takeaways here from this game. Let's move on to the next game, and we'll start talking about that one. I do not think that's the game I meant to click on. We will get to that one right after. I meant to click on, yes, this one. Saints and Chargers. The Saints, they put up 8 points. They lose this one 26-8 to the Chargers. The Chargers played some good football. There was a dirty play in this one by, I think it was Nathan Shepard. Just dirty, trying to injure Justin Herbert. You hate to see that. But Herbert goes 20 for 32. 2 passing touchdowns, also went 4 for 49 on the ground, running the football a little bit more, maybe a little bit healthier now with that ankle injury being a little bit more healed. J.K. Dobbins goes 17 for 57 and a touchdown on the ground. Kamani Vidal still being involved. I think he is the clear handcuff to J.K., so I'm still comfortable keeping Kamani on my teams moving forward. Receiving-wise, though, Ladd McConkey goes 6 for 111 and 2. Great day from Ladd McConkey. This is what we wanted to see out of Ladd McConkey. I still worry about this offense not passing the football enough for this type of production to be sustainable, obviously because one of these was also a 60-yard bomb that Ladd made some people miss and then got into the end zone. But Ladd McConkey, man, I think he looks like the number one wide receiver for this Chargers offense. It's just we need to see them pass the football a little bit more, and I don't know if we're going to be able to see them do that in this Greg Roman-led offense, this Jim Harbaugh offense. So overall, not a lot to talk about there. McConkey's the big takeaway. You love to see those signs of life in a dynasty format, and it's definitely a positive step forward. And he's still a guy that I think is flex-worthy any given week in your redraft leagues. But looking at New Orleans, we don't need to talk too much about it. There really was nothing impressive from really most of these guys. Like I said, they only scored 8 points. Rattler starts out the game, then gets benched for Haener. Didn't really matter because neither of these players scored touchdowns for them. They didn't throw touchdowns for them at all. Alvin Kamara goes 10 for 67 on the ground. Nothing rushing there either. Chris Olave leads the way, 8 for 107. He's the only guy that I probably would say receiving-wise, and Kamara too. Kamara gets it done no matter what. Bad game, good game from the Saints. Kamara just gets enough work, and he gets it done no matter what. But Olave, with Rashid Shaheed out of the lineup, I think Olave is a guy that is going to get more work downfield. We saw it get work downfield a little bit more in this one, and he's a player that I'm very comfortable having on my roster because he has a very good playoff schedule as well. So once Derek Carr gets back in this lineup, Olave's should see a boost in production. And days like this, when you have 8 points on the board and are switching between third string and fourth string quarterbacks and whatnot, this is a solid day from Chris Olave. So definite positive signs from them. Everybody else, though, horrible day from New Orleans and really not worth talking about. All right, so now we'll get to that Bills-Seahawks game. Kind of rainy, but the Bills, they win this one 31-10. They move to 6-2. The Seahawks are now 4-4, 2-3 at home for Seattle. Josh Allen goes 24 for 34, 2 touchdowns and an interception. James Cook, he's the most impressive guy of the day for us here on this team. Finishes, I think right now, is currently the running back one in PPR formats. 17 carries for 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also, James Cook goes 3 for 22 in the air. Ray Davis still involved as the handcuff to James Cook. Merely a handcuff at this moment, but a high-value handcuff, I think, nonetheless. Josh Allen goes 7 for 25 on the ground. Khalil Shakir, man. Amari Cooper was added to this team. Obviously, he goes 1 for 3. Not the day that you want out of Amari Cooper, but kind of like I mentioned with Devontae Adams, where Devontae Adams has opened things up for Garrett Wilson. It almost feels like Amari Cooper opened things up for Khalil Shakir, who goes 9 for 107 on 10 targets. If you were worried about Shakir not getting any work now that Cooper is there, I think that narrative is wrong. Even Keon Coleman goes 5 for 70 and a touchdown. Very aggressive touchdown that he had where he went up and got it over the defender. Dawson Knox 2 for 50. Kincaid 4 for 31 and a touchdown. Overall, very solid day from the Bills in a rainy Seattle game. Now, for the Seahawks, Geno goes 21 for 29, no touchdowns. Not what you want to see Geno Smith go out there and do. Goes 5 for 16 on the ground. Kenneth Walker goes 9 for 12. Horrible Horrible day from Kenneth Walker. Not ideal to see Kenneth Walker do that. Jackson Smith and Jigba with no DK in the lineup go 6 for 69. A.J. Barner's the second leading receiver, 2 for 34. Kenneth Walker, 4 for 33. There just was really nobody else involved in this game. Very disappointing from Tyler Lockett. You felt like with DK out of the lineup, Lockett would get a bump. JSN would get a bump. Even Kenneth Walker could get a bump. None of these guys performed, really. JSN was really the only guy who did. And even then, it wasn't that big of a day. I mean, it was fine enough, but it wasn't that big of a day. But just disappointing overall from Seattle. And nobody really performed for fantasy football teams. So let's move on to our next game here. We do have the Panthers and the Broncos. And this was, look, Bo Nix is, whether you guys want to talk about it or not, over the last month, Bo Nix has been a top fantasy football quarterback, a top 5 guy over the last month. That's legitimately what he's been doing. It's been ugly. It hasn't been fun. It's not pretty. Bo Nix has done it. That's what the numbers say. So I think we got to keep giving that a little bit of respect, at least, from Bo Nix. So let's talk about this game here. Carolina loses 14-28. Bryce Young is the guy under center in this one. They dropped to 1-7. Denver is now 5-3 with Bo Nix. Cortland Sutton even threw a pass. Riley Dixon throwing a pass. I mean, they were getting a little bit creative in this one. Jaleel McLaughlin goes 8 for 47. Javonte goes 17 for 44. That is not the day we wanted from Javonte with the matchup against Carolina. Everybody's been able to run against Carolina. Javonte did not. Unfortunate because we did have him as one of the better plays at the running back position this week. He did not perform as such. But it's fine. Cortland Sutton goes 8 for 100 on 11 targets. Adam Troutman, 4 for 85 and 1. Again, if it's National Tight End Day, I think we just throw these guys in. Tight ends, man. They just seem to be getting the call. Really, nobody else gave him really any help. Marvin Mims missed a huge pass up the seam down the middle of the field going into halftime. Just didn't even look like he was looking for the football. Just Bo Nix doesn't have a lot of help, but he's still putting up points. And the majority of the reason why is he's rushing the football. Didn't do it a lot in this one, but he's still got a rushing touchdown. But he's rushing the football, and he's been scoring touchdowns. So I think Bo Nix, he's sneakier than people think. He's probably still on a lot of waiver wires. And like I said, over the last month, he's been a top 5 quarterback. So we should keep playing him in our lineups where we can plug him in. Now, Carolina, Bryce Young goes 24 for 37, 224, and 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It wasn't that bad of a day from Bryce Young. Dave Canales said he's non-committal on who's going to be the quarterback going into week 9. It doesn't really matter up to this point. They're 1-7. They've shown their cards. It's over for this team in 2024. Chuba goes 15 for 56. It was a tougher matchup for him, so you don't blame that kind of stat line. Jalen Coker leads the way, 4 for 78 and a touchdown. Dynasty stash potentially if he's available in your leagues. If he's not, he's still somebody that we've seen flashes from. Xavier Legette, 4 for 34 and a touchdown, and then really nobody else does anything. But like I said, the Panthers, they just didn't look that good on offense either. So that's kind of what that game looked like. We'll move on to this one. We got 3 games left. Chiefs Raiders here. This was the Patrick Mahomes, Kermit the Frog narrative game. Remember earlier in the preseason, the Raiders, they were using a Kermit the Frog, Patrick Mahomes doll type of thing in practice, and they were trying to, whatever. Patrick said it'll get handled when it gets handled. They win, 27-20. The Chiefs are 7-0. Mahomes still had a very mediocre day, saying it'll get handled when it gets handled. I wish he would have went out there and really lit him up, but maybe that's just me hoping that Mahomes could do that. I don't know if he's done that at all this year. He hasn't done that since last year, to be honest. So 27 for 38, 262, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Kareem Hunt goes 21 for 59 on the ground with a touchdown as well. Kelsey showed up, 10 for 90 and a touchdown, his best day that he's had in a long time. Xavier Worthy gets into the end zone as well, 4 for 37. And then DeAndre Hopkins, a lot of people were excited about DeAndre Hopkins. If you followed the practice reports, if you followed this channel, we said pump the brakes, pump the expectations. DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to play, but he's not going to be heavily involved. Goes 2 for 29, Probably better than some of the days that he had there in Tennessee playing a full, load of snaps. But better days will be ahead for DeAndre Hopkins, but it wasn't this one. If you played him pretty premature in this matchup against the Raiders. Now, for the Raiders, Gardner Minshew was back under center. Aiden O'Connell, obviously, he had the thumb injury. Madison goes 14 for 15. Hell of a stat line there. 14 for 15, 1.1 a carry. We knew this was going to be a very tough matchup. We said do not play Madison at all this week in our starts and sits of the week video. That was probably a good call. He goes 5 for 29 in the air. Brock Bowers goes 5 for 58 in the air. Jacoby Myers is the one who found the end zone, 6 for 52 and a touchdown. Really just not a great day from the Raiders. They scored more points than I think we thought that they would. Really, it's just these offenses, they play slow. They don't score a lot of points. Even the Mahomes led Chiefs, they don't score a lot of points really naturally, and they don't throw for a lot of yards. So if you played Mahomes, he did enough that you were okay with the results, but really nobody in this popped off other than probably Travis Kelce in this matchup. Now, this was a game, and not a game for the reasons that we thought it would be. We thought potentially that this Chicago Bears and this Washington Commanders matchup would be a potential Rookie of the Year battle between Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, and there was really no points scored in this one at all. 15-18, the Commanders win off of a Hail Maryland, is what they called it. Hail Maryland from Jaden Daniels at the very end. His only touchdown of the day was actually no time left on the clock, just a Hail Mary. Jaden Daniels goes 21 for 38, 326, and a touchdown. Brian Robinson, 16 for 65. Austin Eckler, 7 for 52. Jaden, 8 for 52. And you know what? I give it to Jaden, man, because he was getting wrapped up in between series. The rib injuries, it seemed like it was significant. It actually hurt him. But he still went out there. He thugged it out. They get the dub. He puts enough mustard on the football to go out there and get the Hail Maryland to go through. Look, Jaden Daniels, man, he's front runner of the Rookie of the Year. There's no doubt about it. The legend continues to grow for Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin, he goes 5 for 125. Doesn't get in the end zone. Noah Brown, like I said, was the only one who got into the end zone on that touchdown. It was a bomb, 52 yards, that ends up getting tipped by Tyreek Stevenson, who was in the middle of taunting the Commanders fans before the play was snapped. And actually, while the play was snapped, he's still facing the Commanders fans, talking shit, and then turns around, taps the football, tips it up into the air, lands in Noah Brown's hand. What do you know? They'll be reviewing that one in the film room, I am sure. He has already issued an apology on Twitter. It's kind of insane. It's one of the most insane videos I've seen in a while. But they win this one, man. And if you started Terry McLaurin, he did enough in the air that you were okay with it, even though the Commanders really didn't do a lot on offense. The Bears, they didn't do a lot on offense either, but I'll tell you what, if you started DeAndre Swift, you were happy. Caleb goes 10 for 24, 131. No touchdowns, no interceptions, but Swift goes 18 for 129 and a touchdown on the ground. He got a long one there that went in. Got vultured as well on the goal line by Roschon Johnson that we thought was the go-away touchdown to win the game. It wasn't. The play calling for Chicago was horrendous. There was very serious situational game moments where Shane Waldron is bringing in an offensive lineman to play running back. Like, what the hell are we doing, Shane Waldron? This Bears offense that we saw in this matchup, it almost felt like we went back to week 1 and week 2 when Shane Waldron was looking like one of the worst offensive play callers in the NFL. It looked like we teleported back to those weeks because from weeks 3 through 7, it felt like the Bears had gotten it together and they got creative and they were actually utilizing their assets. They did not look like that one in this one. And that's why they lose, man. That's why they dropped this match to the Washington Commanders. Now, in the air, Rome Odunze leads the way. What does that mean? Not much, because he only led the way with 3 catches for 41 yards. Keenan goes 2 for 39. DJ 2 for 27. Felt like this was a good matchup for the DJ Moore going against the Commanders, who they have now kind of held some receivers in check. I think that narrative that we had early in the year where Washington is bleeding points to the wide receiver, maybe we need to calm down with that narrative over the last couple of weeks. They seem to have figured it out over the last couple of weeks as well. So overall, Not a great showing from Chicago. Not a great showing from Tyree Stevenson. A Hail Maryland in this one to win the game. One of the craziest plays I've seen in a while. But look, man, Jaden Daniels, the legend, continues to grow. And a warrior, man, playing through the injury. Last game we will talk about is Cowboys and Niners. And this one was ugly for a while, to be honest. Dallas, their offense looked slow, stagnant, stale. And then in the third quarter, or in the fourth quarter, Dallas kind of got some, I don't want to call it garbage time because they were still trying to win the football game. They were trying to come back and win. It wasn't like, they were getting blown out. You see, they only lost by 6, 24-30. But fourth quarter, if you had CeeDee Lamb, brother, he saved your fantasy football days at the very, 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 very last minute. Prescott, let's talk about San Francisco because they won the game. Purdy goes 18 for 26 and a touchdown. You wish you would have thrown a little bit more. Jordan Mason killed fantasy managers, man. It made me so frustrated because he gets hurt again in this one, or maybe he was hurt going into it. There's rumors that the reporting wasn't accurate coming into this matchup. San Francisco kind of been very shady with a lot of their injury reporting this year so far. Jordan Mason did not play. If you needed him going into Sunday Night Football, in the most respectable way, he screwed you. He screwed you. He screwed me in my matchup as well. I had Jordan Mason. This looked like a good one on paper. You didn't get him. Isaac Grendel leads the way, 14 for 85 and a touchdown. Brock Purdy running the football too, 8 for 56 and a touchdown. And then Ricky Pearsall getting a 39-yard carry. You love to see it. Receiving-wise, George Kittle, it wouldn't be National Tight End Day without George Kittle doing his thing. 6 for 128 and a touchdown there. Debo, 4 for 71. He got banged up again in this one. He just keeps getting banged up, man. And Pearsall, 4 for 38. So no Juwan Jennings. Pearsall looked all right. I'd keep, Pearsall on the team. We'll see what Jennings does when he's back in the lineup. But Debo keeps getting banged up, man. So it's going to keep opening opportunities for Kittle, Pearsall, and Jennings moving forward. And Jordan Mason, I think he's done, man. It seems like curtains have closed. The Jordan Mason experience is done. Isaac Grendel looked better than him when he was plugged in. The Niners are on bye this week. And then Christian McCaffrey is rumored to be coming back in Week 10. We'll see if that actually happens. But it looks like curtains on Jordan Mason. So it's been fun. Good experience. Appreciate your efforts, Jordan Mason. But sincerely, good riddance. See you later. Dallas. Dak Prescott goes 25 for 38, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Ezekiel Elliott goes 10 for 34 and a touchdown. Rico Dowdle shows up to this game, gets sick when he walks into the arena, doesn't play. Dalvin Cook, they were talking about he earned more touches. He's going to have more opportunity. He goes 6 for 12, 2 yards a carry. Not great. This run game is just atrocious. And honestly, it's a shame that they have not addressed this, and they need to go out and I think that they need to make a trade. They need to keep getting weapons to put around Dak Prescott. I can't imagine why you pay Dak the money you pay Dak not to put weapons around him and try and take advantage of this, I would say, a good team that you have other than the offensive side of the football. The defense is all right, but whatever, man. I digress. CeeDee Lamb, I said he saved your day. He goes 13 for 146 and 2 touchdowns. Both of those touchdowns and a majority of those yards all come in that fourth quarter. So he saved you at the very last minute. Jalen Tolbert, 3 for 44. Jake Ferguson, 6 for 23. And everybody else, who cares? Dallas, I don't know, man. We'll see what they do. 3-4 right now. You got to imagine that Mike McCarthy is going to be on the hot seat here pretty soon. We just need to see him get it together. But if you have options like Dak and CD and Jake Ferguson, they're still getting it done, despite the team not being that great. So I digress, I guess, really, but that is what that is. Let's look at the Monday night game because we do have Giants and Steelers tonight. I think that the Steelers are going to win this one. If you want to take that, you can take that. The game total is 36.5 points. It's very low. Not necessarily looking like it's going to be the most exciting of games. You have Malik Neighbors, George Pickens, Najee, all of these fantasy options that should be in there. But we'll see what happens, man, overall. Now, folks, that is it. That is the Week 8 recap. If you've watched up to this point, if you've been hanging out with us, if you've been chilling, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Those are the best free ways to support this channel. They actually do help us grow a ton, and they mean a lot to me. So if you haven't done those and you would consider it, go consider it for me. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Go join the Discord. The Discord is free. Link to join is in the description of this video. So like I said, free to join, no risk in doing that. And if you want to support this show, Go play on Underdog. Use promo code LEAGUEFFB for up to $1,000 in bonus cash. With all of that being said, I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next episode. Until then, peace out.